Good morning, Chameleon Academy. This is Bill Strand, and we are here to talk about UVB for chameleons. And this, I do have a lot that I can share, but this is an interactive session. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll talk about them. Now, since this is an intense subject, I'd like to be a little bit more disciplined and have questions about UVB. There's so much that we need to learn about UVB. So let's ask questions about UVB in particular. So I want to say good morning to everybody. Okay. Have a question from a little scuff. Says, if UVB levels are tested on females, how do we know if males have a different optimal level of UVB above functional? And the answer is that the only way we can test that is actually on males. And so, and the question would be, how would we test that? And that's the big challenge with all of UVB with chameleons is, how do you test how much UVB they need? The only test that I've been able to come up with is, can females lay fully calcified eggs without the use of dietary D3? And this is why we have to go with the Ferguson zones for the highest level we want in the cage, is because how do you measure at what point the UVB becomes dangerous? It's most assuredly a dose as to how long you have certain amounts of UVB, but there's no real definite black and white lines in measuring UVB for chameleons. So unfortunately, it's just going to have to be with long-term trial and error. At this point, when we're giving UV index of 3, it seems to be doing well for the males. We don't see any detriment. And when I tested at UV index of 6 to see if males or females needed more, there was no difference that I could detect. So at this point, there's no indication that they need different levels, and they have been doing fine when people have been using UV index of 3. And so at this point, that's what we have to go with. And I absolutely welcome anybody coming up with another testing method and more information, because that's what this is all about. It's figuring things out and going forward. All right, we have a question from Chris. In any way, do you feel like the UVB light can have any effect on humidity? How much heat does a UVB light produce? UVB and humidity would be two totally different things. So they're independent. I don't know. Perhaps humidity would filter out how much UVB is actually getting to the chameleon, just because there's more water in the air. But I don't have any specific measurements as to the relationship between UVB and humidity. How much heat does a UVB light produce? And that depends on the UVB light. And the T5s are actually, they produce a pretty good amount of energy and heat. And so raising them above the cage is good ventilation as well as dissipating UVB energy. So you just got to be cognizant of that. If you're using a screen cage, it may not matter so much because things dissipate so quickly. But when you start getting into a hybrid cage or a glass cage, you got to be mindful as to how much heat your fixtures are producing. And that's a serious consideration. Good morning, Elise. And let's see, does fog block UVB? Yeah. I don't know how much. I haven't tested that, and it'd be kind of hard to test that because different densities of fog would block UVB. Well, okay, let me say, I don't know. I'm going to say I don't know. I'm assuming that it would, but if you can get a sunburn on a cloudy day, well, UVB is getting through. So I don't know how much it filters it out and how significant that filtering would be. So, and Chris is talking about, would it make the moisture evaporate more quickly, causing the climate's humidity to change? Oh, we're starting to get into some, you're going to have to take a humidity meter there. But try it out and find out. I don't think it's, at least in the way that we do chameleon cages, I don't think it's significant unless your chameleons are living in a cloud. And if they're living in the cloud, well, take a solar meter and do a test right there in the middle of the fog, and that'll tell you right then what levels you have. Hello, Sam. Hello, Richard, and hello, Elise. Oh, my goodness. Such wonderful questions. What's the difference between the tube UVB and the small compact coil UVB light? All right, let's see if I can pull this up here. Give me a second here, and I will tell you exactly, show you. Let's see, let's go to 11. I'll show you exactly the differences. And I'm going to show you differences of the output. And so we're talking, I think we all know the difference is between a linear and a compact fluorescent. A linear is a big long bulb. The compact fluorescent is taking that big long bulb and coiling it about so it can fit inside of a standard light socket. And so that was made for bringing efficiency and not having to change out all the light sockets in all the houses. So here's a chart that's going to show you the differences between the different types of fluorescent technologies. And I picked the Arcadia brand because they're a brand that has the CFLs, they have the T8s, and they have a T5. And so what I'm showing you here is a 12%, their 12% line. And in the left, that is in their 12%. That's a T5 high output CFL. So it's taking the T5 technology and putting it into a compact fluorescent light. They're 20 watt. The fixture is, I use the Xterra compact fixture, and you can see the output there. The orange level is the UV index 7.4 at the top, and the bottom of the orange is UV index of 3, and that's the basking area that I generally advise. That's we want the red out of the cage, and we want the chameleon to be basking within the at the bottom of the orange zone. But it's okay if the chameleon crawls in the orange zone. The blue, don't know at how far down that's still effective, so we just let that dissipate into the cage. But you'll see that the CFL at 26 watts, it kind of replicates the T8 fluorescent technology. Of course, the T5 just blows them all out of the water because it's a later technology. But you can see right there, with the T5 linear technology, you have more of a space to work with. It's easier to work with. You don't have to cram things higher up in the cage. That said, with these particular lights, that's not bad. I mean, you can use that CFL. That's very effective. And that T8 T8 12%, 10%, 10.0, those are effective UVB lights. And so these are good. Now, when we start getting into, I'll go ahead and show you another CFL, and that's the dreaded Chameleon kit. Let's see, the dreaded Chameleon kit. Where is that? Well, okay. Give me a second here. This is something you look at when we, this is what comes with the Chameleon kit. A kit that we hate so much is because it is, the UVB is so weak. That UVB does produce UVB levels in the range that we want. You can find a 7 UV index 7.4 and UV index 3, and that's our usable basking zone. The reason why this CFL is so bad is because that basking zone is, you get all of 1.5 inches, 2 inches of usable space, and that usable space is 1 inch from the top of the cage. And so it's effective for baby chameleons, but as soon as the chameleon is big enough to be safely sold to the public, it starts to get too big to be using this effective range. Now, we know the real problem is that there's no education. And so people just put on the light. And so they think, I've got UVB, I'm set. When the fact is that you need to make sure that your chameleon is able to access a spot 3 inches in front of that bulb. You get an adult, and the reason why, I mean, you get chameleons that are very big are having trouble using it. I mean, imagine a male veiled chameleon with that casque. He can hardly even fit in that if he wanted to. So this is why the CFLs got such a bad reputation. It's because the one that most people know about is this very weak one. So, I mean, it actually can be used, and I've proven that it can be used. I've raised 2 veiled chameleon babies and 1 panther chameleon babies, 3 separate babies, 3 separate times, fully healthy, no dietary D3, and just this in the kit. So it can be done, but you have to know what you're doing. You shouldn't have to have all the experience that I have to be able to make it work. And if you don't, well, metabolic bone disease. Let's see. I have a question here from Emerald. Are you only using the tubes for UVB? Use them along with the Lucky Reptile Bright Sun, for example. At this time, I'm only working with the fluorescent technology because it's the most available and the most reliable. When you start getting into, I assume that the Lucky Reptile Bright Sun is something like mercury vapor or something like that. And so you can use those mercury vapor type UVBs. The problem with having heat and UVB in with the same lamp is that you have to find the right place within that range where you have the right temperature and the right UVB. So you can find a place that has the right basking temperature, right level that you have your UVB, you're fine. And that works. It's just you don't have control of separating the two. I got a bunch of mercury vapors to test, and 2 of them failed right out of the box. And so my testing of the mercury vapors has been delayed, shall we say, until I get around to trying it again and seeing if I've got some that work. So I'll have to say, yeah, they work. And UVB is UVB. So let's see. Hello, everybody. We have a number of people coming in. I take Atticus outside a lot. Is it good for him to get the real stuff? It is the best for him. So natural UVB is the best. You get the sunlight. That's exactly what they were designed to accept. And so us splitting light into 3 different parts of visible light, heat, UVB, it's working. It works great, but nothing beats the real sun. Let's see. We'll go one more example, and then I'm going to go into some of these charts. Larger habitat went with a 12%. Panther will bask, head up to the higher basking where I have UVB. Index a little over 5, which is the highest point you can use. He will absorb by laying flat for an hour. Yep. And then spend the rest of the day where the UVB is only 1 to 2.3. Yeah, those are safe ranges. So the whole point of us putting together this UVB gradient is because we want to give the chameleons a choice. So let's talk about this gradient here, this choice that we're going to be giving our chameleon. And This is really what I've done is I've taken the UVB light and I've broken it up into 3 sections. And so we're looking for we have the top level, the maximum cage UV index is the value that we decide is too much. We know that UVB is damaging to cells. It's dangerous. It's also necessary for life. So, yeah, thank you, nature. But there is a level where it's going to be too much to get into the cages. And like I said in the video, some of the videos in the podcast, our UVB lights can produce higher levels than you can find on the surface of the earth. It's ridiculous to assume that that's okay for a chameleon to be right up against. So we have to decide how much is the most UVB we're going to allow into the cage. And that's not necessarily straightforward as to determine what that level is. We'll go into the Ferguson zone soon because that's a good reference. The other level is what level do we want them to bask at? Is what is the effective UV index? And if you've been listening to the podcast at all, you know that is UV index of 3. We've tested that. We know over and over, a number of us in the community have repeated the test, and we know that that is effective. We're not saying that that's the only effective. We're not saying that UV index 2 is not effective. We don't know. We haven't tested it. But what we do know is that UV index of 3 is sufficient and effective for a chameleon for its life and for females to produce calcified eggs. So we have a very strong data point there. Every one of the lights is going to produce these levels at different parts within their output. And so we've got to pick the right light with the output that matches what we want to put into our cage. Now, for those of you, let's go back. Let's go back a little and just start at the beginning, just so we know what we're dealing with here. This is the the vitamin D3 cycle, where the UVB energy activates the skin that UVB energy, and it starts the process. It doesn't create D3 at the skin. It starts the process that has to go through the liver and through the kidneys, and then finally produce the vitamin D3. So you can see how if you break or mess up the liver or the kidneys, you may be affecting your ability to produce D3. Now, we don't know at what point of damage the liver stopped doing D3. So we don't know that, but it's good to know that this is a process that involves a number of organs. Let's see. Emerald Garrett says, are mercury vapors not common in the U.S.? You can find them easily. There's a question from the chat as to are mercury vapors available here. Here is the UV index scale. You know, if you've been around for a while, you remember the microwatts per centimeter squared, and that's still important to understand because there's a number of experiments that Dr. Ferguson did that use those units, so it's good to understand them. But with the UV index scale that we've adopted from the World Health Organization, it makes it very convenient for us because now we are using the same units as all the weather stations around the world. Of course, we've got to be careful how we use that information because just because it says UV index 13 or 15 or whatever over in Madagascar doesn't mean that our chameleons are sitting out and basking in that. But it's a good reference. All right, so it's gotten a little bit confusing because Solar Meter has, number one, changed the color of their 6.5, and number two, has white labeled it, meaning that they sell it to other companies with the other company stickers on it. So you're now seeing 6.5 meters pop all over the place. ZoomEd's got it. Lugardi has one. I mean, anybody can have a branded 6.5 now. So just know that that's happening, and those the electronics on the inside are just the same as the solar meter 6.5. So if it's coming from, it's based off of a solar meter 6.5. The only difference is the sticker on the outside. But you do have to make sure that you're using a 6.5. That's going to give you the UV index scale. Oops, I'm sorry. There we go. There we go. There's your visual. And the 6.2 is the one that does the microwatts per centimeter squared. And so just be careful and make sure you buy what you want. Now, that good old Ferguson zones. Big question. How much UVB do our reptiles need? And that's a difficult question to answer. So a number of scientists got together and created what they're calling the Ferguson zones in honor of Dr. Gary Ferguson, where they analyzed a reptile's environment, their behavior, and they gathered a bunch of information. And they said, okay, this is what we think the range should be. And you see chameleons often fall into zone 3. And so this is, that maximum level is as good as any. 7.4. Okay. I mean, we got to pick a value, and there are a lot of thought went into this, and so that's a good enough value. Now, I don't know that it's a coincidence that when they're talking about the maximum recorded, it's right about 3. The reason why we in the chameleon community picked UV index 3 to really study is because that was what was chosen by Pete Hawkins. And he is the first one who did a study about veiled chameleons and calcified eggs. I didn't ask him why he started with UVI 3, or if I did, I forget what he said. But anyway, that's what he started with. And so I replicated UV index 3, proved that that works, and proved that it works just as well as UV index 6. So, okay, we can stick with UVI 3. And then Jonathan Hill took UVI 3 and used it in his panther chameleon breeding. And so we have a lot of data that says UV index 3 is effective. And so even if, I mean, there's always studies going on. I think Dr. Ferguson did some more testing on panther chameleons. There's talk about moving them into zone 4 or whatnot. No matter what changes are made on panther chameleons or veiled chameleons, as far as Ferguson zones, we still know that UV index 3 is effective. And so we have information beyond the Ferguson zones. And so we need to rely on that information. And that's really what we should be doing. We should not be, when there's a scientific study made, who knows when, we shouldn't just leave it like that. We take that information and run with it. We're the ones who deal with chameleons day in, day out, and nobody else has the opportunities that we do. And so we need to take advantage of that, not wait for somebody else to come and do our do for us. So now let's talk a little bit about how UVB comes off of the bulbs. What I've done in this this chart is I've taken a 12% UVB, and Arcadia 12% UVB, and I took off the reflector. And that is what you see in the left-hand side. When you take off the reflector, your light goes in 360 degrees all around the bulb. The only reason why it's not going up in this picture is because, well, it's blocked by the top fixture. But all of the energy goes all over the place. And you can see once I measured at 6 inches in front, I measured a UV index of 3.6. Which is, you're thinking, oh, that's not doesn't sound like a 12%. Well, things change when you put on the reflector. All of a sudden, you get you get more than double of all that UVB, because you're taking all the energy that's flying all over the place, and now reflecting it back into the cage. So that's why a reflector is so important. And then you put on a screen, and that's on the right-hand side, and you see how it filters things down. The screen filters that we use are like 70% transmission. Those are the normal cage filters. And so we lose about 30% of the light. And that's just good things to know about how our bulbs work. And that's why we've made a lot of big deal about reflectors. The life of the bulb also matters a great deal. And you'll notice when you first put on a light, well, you'll notice only if you use a solar meter, when you first put on any one of our lights, you get an enormous amount of energy out of there. And you can look at this is on that ZoomEd T5 5.0 that comes with the Chameleon kit. And you can see on day one, that's a much different output than you see 2 weeks after it burns in. We call it burning in. Like if you got 100 hours of light, that's considered burning the light in, and then it becomes a lot more stable. It's still degrading over time, and by the end of the year, it's degraded, but you're going to get a lot less degradation than you do in the first 2 weeks, which is a steep drop. But the important thing is to know is that if you go measure it, a new light, and do all your setup when you first turn on the light, that's not going to be what you get 2 weeks later. So it's important when you put together your site, if you're your cage, if you've got using a solar meter, that you test it 2 weeks later, 2-3 weeks later, and that's what will be stable for months and months. All right. So now Elise is confused. What is the best UVB light to get for my screen enclosure? The best UVB light is still, I'm going to say the best overall light is the linear 6% or 5.0. Yeah, that's it. T5, high output, linear, 5.0 or 6%, and put it about 2 inches above the cage, and your basking branch about 6 inches below the cage, and that way the Chameleon sitting on the basking branch is going to be right around the UV index of 3. So we can wait. I got a chart on that. We can take a look at that. 13. Give me a second here. I don't mind jumping around. If you want everything in order, you can go watch the video. And there is a video. If you want to review any of this, you can review this video here. It'll be up on YouTube. But on YouTube this morning, I released a video that goes over all of this in order. And so you can reference that. But here's where to place the UVB fixture. And the two left ones are with the 6% or 5.0. It's okay to put it directly on top of the cage, but you're going to get some very high UVB in the first couple of inches. I prefer, and that's okay if you have a chameleon that doesn't crawl on the top, but many chameleons will crawl on the top. But ideally, you lift your 6% or 5.0 2 inches above the top of your cage, and that way you get all of that ultra high UVB out of the way. And then you've got about 4 inches of the very good basking index. And that doesn't sound like much, but when you're putting 4 inches to the back of the chameleon, your basking branch ends up being at 6 inches. And that's a very usable space for most sizes of chameleon in a 2x2 by 4 foot cage. Obviously, you start doing with parsoni and things start changing, but that's a good general range. If you go to the third one over there, this is what happens when you put a 12% or 10.0 directly on top of the cage. You are blasting the first 6 inches of your cage with with light energy that is beyond what the Ferguson zones say is the maximum to do. So uh, that is why we don't put a 12% or 10.0 directly on top of the cage. And I know that's been bouncing around social media, and there's never been a good reason for doing that. Um, Ideally, 12% is great to use. I love using a 12%, but you got to raise it above the cage, about 6 inches, and then you have 6 inches of very good, 6, 7 inches of very good UVB range. Now, when I say 6 inches and I'm giving you these measurements, know that this is a compromise. I have had to select one value to represent a lifetime of degradation. So between the initial 100-hour burn-in value and the end of life 1 year old value, uh, there's a pretty good play there. And so I've had to pick a middle ground where at the beginning, the UVB energies are going to be higher than our target energies, but still within the safe zone. And then at the end of the life, the UVB energies will be lower than we want, but still in the effective zone. And so don't expect that you're going to see UV index of 3 right at the Chameleons back for that entire year. It's going to go up. It's going to stay up, start up and go down. So that's these measurements are a compromise. This is 2 questions, both from John and Emerald Garrett. Does anybody make a stand lift at T5 fixture above the cage? Yes, they do. You can actually go on Etsy and type in a stand. I did a video on this on my channel. I don't remember the name. Oh, and I don't have them. But he actually makes stands from a 3D printed stand where you can fit in the Arcadia Pro T5s. And it's a nice, easy way. Let's see. Oh, yeah. There are other ways to do it. For my my leap UVBs, I just cut the box that they came in, and I made little stands for them. So that's another way to do it. It doesn't look classy, but you can do it all sorts of different ways. And so the number, let's see, Emerald Garrett's, what do I use? So I use either the stands or else I just put little blocks. You can get little blocks of 2x4 and just cut little sections, and you can make very convenient little stands. So yeah, where cages are starting to get a little bit more sophisticated, and hopefully it'll become easier to do that in the future. So, All right, so we've got where to place the UVB fixture. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so I'm going to give you, excuse me. So this is showing taking the Ferguson zone chart, and the reason why it's good where I'm using the Ferguson zones a lot is because it's a respected chart and it's universally accepted, and so that's a good place to start. But on this, as far as I know, UV index of 3 is the only one we in the community, well, that's the only value we in the community proven out long-term over generations of chameleons. And so that's the only value that we know is effective for chameleons. Everything else is extrapolated and intelligently come to. And and I don't mean that in a way that we should not respect these numbers. This is an incredible piece of work. What I'm trying to say is we in the community, the chameleon community, we need to keep testing. And I am hoping that we firm up these numbers. And this is why it's very important that we understand the theory behind putting together a UVB system within our cage. There is nothing magic about the numbers that we have today. UV index 3, I talk about how we've tested it out. It works. Well, all it takes is for somebody to put in a lot of effort and show that UV index of 2 works just as well. And if that happens, if you understand the UVB theory that I'm talking about, how to create UV map and gradient in your cage, it's absolutely simple to adjust to things that we learn in the future. And so, it's what is proper for our chameleon is not a bulb. This whole thing about veiled chameleons need 12% and panthers need 5% or anything of that. I mean, that doesn't make sense. When you actually understand UVB lights, that doesn't make sense at all, because you get the levels you need off of both a 6% and a 12%, 5.0 and a 10.0. You just have to know how to use it, and you can use a 12% incorrectly. So if you got a veiled chameleon, you can use a 12%, but you can also use it incorrectly if you put it directly on top of the cage. So there needs to be an intelligence to how you use the tools, and we need to get rid of this idea that there's certain bulbs for certain chameleon species. That has never made sense, and that just comes from not understanding how UVB works. And unfortunately, it just spread all over social media because it's easier than explaining how UVB works. If you're watching this live session, if you're listening to the podcast, I assume you're part of the group that wants to understand how UVB works and not just repeat sound bites that may or may not really make sense. Stands by King. I think King's Reptiles. Yes, I think that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. But I did a video. Look on my YouTube channel. My 12 Days of Christmas. It was one of the first ones I did. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. So let's see. We have a question here about how good is the UVB light until it's not good anymore. Well, it's good. It does pretty good. So at 6 inches, if you follow the charts on my my care sheets, the normal degradation of the bulb gets you down into the upper 2s. So, I mean, that's still within a good effective range, and so you're not really in danger at the year point. And many people, and this is the wonderful thing about having a UVB meter, the 6.5, is many people are saying, hey, my bulb is still good. I don't have to replace it after a year. And this is true. The year is a safe time to change your bulb. It's not the time that your bulb has totally given up on life. So there is much more life inside of these bulbs, but you need a meter to be able to know that and know when it is time to replace the bulb. So there's another huge reason why having a meter is a good thing for you, and in the end, probably save you some money because UVB bulbs are expensive. So there's our Ferguson zones. Let's go ahead and take a look on this chart. I've compared the output of a number of UVBs out there. Now, this isn't an exhaustive chart. This is just meant, what I did is I took a selection of the best examples that are out there to be showing you how what's available. So on the left, I have the very weak CFL from ZoomEd that goes into the kit, and you can see how pitiful the output is. That grayed area is the size of the chameleon cage, and so you can see how ridiculous it is to use this as a kit and then assume that somebody who doesn't understand all of this is going to know to put a basking brand up in that little area, especially since the vine included in the kit has no way of attaching to the screen. So it's just, this is why it's a disaster of a product, even though that technically UVB does come off of that bulb. Next over is a highly effective CFL, and that's from Arcadia. We don't see too many of those, but you can find them if you look. But there's a usable range out of that. You go up to the most the strongest CFL available, and that's the third one over, and that's the Exoterra 26 watt. And the thing is, when you look at this chart, it says, oh, okay, well, I'll just raise that up a little bit. The thing is that red area is so intense. I mean, it's ridiculously intense. That is where I measured a UV index of 160 at the screen, right up by the bulb, going through the screen fixture, 160. And so what you have is such a steep degradation of light, but it starts so high. That's why I generally don't like using CFLs for adult cages. Now, they can be used for adult cages, as long as you know what you're doing and you know what the energies you're working with, and that's the advantage of being educated in this. You can use it. So I'm not going to say it can't be used. And that very weak bulb that is causing so much MBD in the Chameleon kit, that's actually an effective bulb if you want to use it on a baby cage. And so this is an example of where we don't want to demonize a product. We want to understand the product, how to use it effectively, because we may want to use it in another case where it's actually the best one to use. I don't want to put a 12% T5 over a 18-inch tall cage. I mean, that's you're blasting the poor area. So we need to know what we're working with. There in the middle is a T8. I know there's been a lot of talk about how T8s can't be used, and that's absolutely incorrect. People have been raising veiled chameleons with 10% T8s all the time. You don't have to. I mean, so it's important to understand the tools and not understand all the noise. And I've got to say, Facebook has been a horrible place of just taking up the worst myths about UVB and passing them off, and it's spreading like wildfire. I have no idea. It's been a horrible spool for information. But then we get into the last three. This is the Arcadia line, and I like, when I was doing all of these charts, Arcadia was the only one that had a very good high quality fixture. And so much of my charts have the Arcadia lights because, number one, they have 3 levels, and they have a bulb that came with a high, a good fixture. And so whatever numbers I made were consistently reproduced by people anywhere in the world because they had the same product. As we know, your reflector and your bulb, different reflectors will give you different outputs from the same bulb. It all depends on how you drive the bulb and how the reflector works. And so being able to have a bulb reflector combination that was consistent was perfect, because in doing all of these charts, I tested so many. I tested every Exoterra, every Zoomed, every Arcadia available. And this is before we had more brands coming into the market. So I had to pick something, and I did multiple bulbs of the Arcadia, because you can't just test one bulb and say this is it. You got to see how it is across multiple bulbs. So I had to pick one. Now I'm encouraged by Leap coming out with their bulbs. I've never liked the quality of the Zoomed fixtures. They were designed to be as cheap as possible to go into Petco, because that's under the philosophy that they had that reptile people will only buy cheap stuff in Petco. So that's changing. I'll leave that. They've chosen their road. But Leap is a new company that's come out. They've come out with the T5 from the same company. And so, it's a good quality bulb, but they have a fixture as well. And so everybody using the Leap brand is going to have the same bulb and the same fixture. And so I'm now just starting to characterize. And I got to tell you, it's not just measuring one bulb and one fixture. It's over time and doing multiples. So it's not easy, but I'm starting the process. Anyway, what I'm showing here is the difference between the 6%, the 12%, and the 14%. So you can see a comparison. And that gray area on the middle one, the 12%, is the area of a 48-inch cage. And so you can see that with the ultra high UVB, the red is it covers quite a bit of space. So you'd want to get that out of the cage. That's why we have to raise the level up. And let's see, we'll go to, I'm going to show it in a different way. So right there, I've brought out exactly where the basking place is to be. So you can see you want to use the 6%. The basking branch is going to be at around 6 inches. If you raise the light up, and then 12% is 12 inches, and that's completely coincidental. There's no relationship between the percent and the number down. The 14, you got to go down 19 inches. So you do have to make a decision as to how powerful do you want it. And by looking at this, we can make a decision as to me, I'd say the 6% is 5.0 is very good for general usage. Most people aren't going to want to put a 6-inch riser on their cage. So the 6% is a good one to go for. Me, when I'm using my rack systems, and so I actually have a baker's rack shelf above my cage, it's very easy for me to give a 6-inch riser above the cage. And so I'd use 12% a lot. But the 14%, that's a little much. I don't need I don't need it that big, and I don't want to have to suspend it 9 inches above my cage. So this is how understanding what comes off of the bulbs allows you to make intelligent decisions in your chameleon husbandry. Let's see. Let's go to some questions here. Oh, let's see. Richard, you've asked a great question here. Too much UVB look like? And two good questions. As chameleons can see UVB, do they self-regulate to prevent too much and be damaging? Okay, so the first one, what does too much UVB look like? That is a difficult question because it destroys cells, but it destroys cells in different ways and at different rates. And so there are things that we suspect are because of UVB damage. And the thing is, since it's over time, it's very difficult to point to, okay, this is a cancer. This is an eye problem. Chameleons they know not to look at the sun. So we see different things in different places. Dr. Gary Ferguson did a study where he noticed a decreased fecundity in the females that were under very high UVB. And so I think that's the big problem for us in the community is there isn't an easy thing to point to and say, yeah, see, this is the problem. And so when we don't have anything black and white, it's where pseudoscience takes over and people just say, well, I know the answer to that. And they come up with something that can't be disputed because we don't know. So at this point, we don't have a firm black and white. This is what happens when you get too much UVB. We just know that it destroys cells, and we see it manifest in different ways, and we can only guess because there's other things that cause those problems that we're seeing. So it's still something that we have to work through. And this is a very good question. As chameleons can see UVB, do they self-regulate to prevent too much and be damaging? Through the testing, we know that they will bask in UVB if they need more D3. So they recognize UVB, they know where it is, and they know when they need it. What we don't have is evidence that they understand differing levels of UVB. And I would say that we should take a page from looking at how well they understand heat. They understand that they need to warm up, and so they will go into a basking bulb. But we all know that a chameleon will sit under a basking bulb even though it's too hot, and they will burn themselves. We have that all the time, burning. Why in the world would a chameleon sit under something so hot that they are literally burning? And so there's something inside the chameleon that was not developed to understand heat, at least not the way we do it. When they're in nature, sunlight consists of both heat, UVB, and visible light, and so it's all together. And so maybe there's a detection system in them that says that understands when those all three are together. But of course, there's nothing in nature that is going to be a pinpoint of heat. So they didn't have to develop a defense against that. As to whether they would know to get out of the UVB if it was too intense, I'm going to say we don't have the answer to that, but I'm going to say I don't think they would. I don't think that they have developed that ability, or I'm going to assume that they haven't developed that ability and that I have to be responsible for putting safe levels into the cage until there's evidence that they can detect differing levels of UVB instead of okay, I need to go get more UVB. So this is a case, and it's just like basking. We have to make sure that the levels coming into the cage are enough that they can be effective, but low enough that it's not going to be burning to them, because they will burn themselves. So I'm just assuming they're going to do the same with UVB until further information comes. Lisa's asking, how about basking at 10 inches? Is that too low? You're going to have to, which light and what situation. If you are using a 6% and and it's going through a screen top, and you have your basking branch at 10 inches, then you're getting less than UV index of 3. And so you are in that range where maybe it's effective. It probably is effective in the 2s, but we don't know. We haven't tested. And so, at this point, I can't say that it's too low. He may be getting as much as he needs, but I am saying that to be safe, you'll want it to be higher. And really, you can just put in more branches. Let them decide. And this is the advantage of saying, all right, I am limiting the amount of UVB going into the cage at 7.4, whatever you decide, whatever's comfortable for you, because then it's okay to give your chameleon the full run of the cage. And whether they understand intensity of UVB or such, it doesn't matter, because they're going to be safe, at least with the information we have now. And I'm pretty confident that we're okay with that. I think that they can handle higher UVB than 7.4. Thing is, we just don't know where that limit is. And so cutting it off at 7.4 we're in the comfortable range. We know we're pretty confident that's safe. I mean, I've done it at UV index of 6 and long term. And so I'm okay with 7.4. I'm comfortable with that. But would 9's probably safe, but 11, now I'm starting to get uncomfortable. And so since we don't know where that limit is, just control how much UVB goes into the cage, and you don't have to worry about it. Give them give them branches all over so they can climb and get what they need. We're exploring this a lot with the high altitude species. Unfortunately, we don't get Miramontanus in anymore, But Mario Youngman, when he was working with the Hanengensis, which it's a rare species, but it comes from very high elevations. And he found out if he doesn't give them the higher UVB, they don't color up. And so the higher UVB, the higher elevation chameleons are going to have developed a defense against high UVB, because the higher you go up in the mountain, the more sunlight has the UVB hasn't filtered out because of the air. So you're getting higher levels just naturally. So the chameleons, of course, develop defenses against that. So what's important in all of this, go ahead, use all of these numbers with what we've got right now. But what's important, what I'd love for you all to come away with, is understanding how we came to the numbers and understanding when it's appropriate to use different numbers. But if you understand how to create a UVB map out of your cage and pick the right bulb to give you that map and how to use that bulb appropriately, then you have the power to create any UVB map inside of your cage. And you can do experiments, and you can help us in the community move forward and have a better idea of what kind of UVB we should be using. I say UVB3, I talk about UVB3 over and over and over again, and that's because there's so much data behind it that it works. But that doesn't mean we should stick with it. We should challenge it all the time. Challenge it, not with, hey, I don't think it should be right. I mean, with actual testing. If you want to challenge UV index of 3, and I encourage you to do that, you have to come up with as much testing that we used to create that confidence in UV index 3. Give us that amount of testing with UV index of 2, or give us a reason why it should be UV index of 4. I mean, the field is wide open for whatever you want to test and bring to us. Chris is asking, can camera lenses on phones detect UV? Yeah, and they have ways you can take pictures of UVB. In fact, some scientists took UVB light on chameleons and took pictures, and glow. And so chameleons are actually seeing different colors than we do. And these like Brucessia, we see little brown things. Chameleons see these glowing blue all over. So these very drab chameleons are actually very beautiful if you're able to see into the UV range. Yes, there are cameras that will take pictures in that range. Lisa's asking, have I ever thought about writing a book all about the knowledge and chameleon experiences to pass on to us chameleon owners? Yes. And I was working on a book, and it was like 2 years into it. And I decided the best thing to do would be to turn that book into a website. Because if I continued on with that book, it would probably be 4 years before I had it all done. I wouldn't be able to do anything else during that 4 years because it takes a lot of work. And what I was finding is because I was doing the podcast and I kept growing as a herpetoculturist, and that's what happens when you do the podcast. I regularly have other people on that are always challenging me. And so I'm always growing, which is wonderful and it's exhilarating. But that means that the thing I wrote a year ago, I want to rewrite. And so what I did is I made chameleonacademy.com, and I put all of the work that I was doing into the website. And eventually I'd like to write a book. But right now, I think the best way to serve the community is to keep the website up to date. And you'll notice what I'm doing is with this, what I'm doing lately with the themes, where I have one video a day. If you're on Instagram or YouTube, you see I do one video a day on a certain theme. And then there's a podcast, and then there's a video, a long form video that releases Saturday morning. That I have this live. And so really deep dive through the entire week on one topic. You'll notice that those topics correspond to a page on my website. And so what I am doing is I've produced this huge, there's like 150 pages on this website of chameleon information. And instead of going on to, I actually have four sections that I want to get to build out the website. But what I'm doing is right now I'm going back to the beginning and I'm reviewing those subjects and I'm really diving deep into them. And so every week I am making one of those pages exceptionally filled, a multimedia experience. You can read it, you can watch, look at the pictures, you can listen, and you can view videos that are embedded throughout the page. And so this has become, I think, the best way for me to communicate everything that I've been gathering and researching and pulling together from all corners of the community. And that's the best way to make that available. That's why I chose to put it all into a website. I think one day I would like to make a book, and that's kind of nice because we all like books. I like books, and it would be nice to have it all once things calm down and I've made my section on breeding. That's next, and then there's this section on natural history and traveling, and that's after that. And I can start putting it together in a print book so we can all just sit around with a cup of coffee and not look at a screen and enjoy chameleon learning. So, so that's what I'm doing. That's the story. We are coming to the end of our live session here. If you have any more questions, let me know. Really appreciate you all being here. This is an exercise in personal growth. This is my personal growth. Going through these topics, every time I review these topics and I put all of this material together, I am learning better ways. I, of course, understand it better, and I'm getting better ways of explaining it. And when I do that, I understand it more deeply. And so all of this, you are with me on this journey of growth, and this is a personal growth journey. This is why I can have, I'm 7 years into this outreach, the seventh season. We're 250. I don't know where I'm going as far as number of podcasts, and well over 100 videos, and they're all and growing. And so this is it's a personal life passion, and I really appreciate it's a lot of fun having you all with me. I see a lot of names that are consistent. You're following me, jumping between the podcast to Instagram to YouTube, and we're having a good time of this. And so I appreciate you all doing this with me. And thank you very much. I have a lot of very nice comments, people being appreciative in the chats, and it's wonderful. Next week, oh, by the way, if you're interested, once again, I do have a newsletter that I put out every Sunday night that has the links to all the different videos. If you didn't catch a video, one of the days, just sign up for that newsletter and you'll get a list of where all of the videos are kept. I'll link it to it, and actually I can embed them now, and so you can just watch them from the email. And so it's chameleonacademy.com. The homepage, just scroll down and there's a place where it says sign up for the newsletter. You sign up there, and I'll be sending the UVB one tomorrow night. Next week, the theme is veiled chameleons. And so I have totally seriously revamped the care summary that I have. And if you want a sneak peek, you can go take a look at the website. But I am doing now my daily videos, and we're diving into the veiled chameleon next week, and so that'll be a whole lot of fun. So, and Cherry SJ comes up and says, "Nope, that's Emerald Garrett. No, this is a good one right here, everybody. What is UVB?" Boy, I should have started with that. UVB is a certain set of wavelengths of light outside of our visible range, and those wavelengths are what cause sunburns and allow us to synthesize vitamin D3. And we need special lights that give UVB. And if we don't have them, our chameleons may get metabolic bone disease. So it's a very important part of chameleon husbandry. Okay, all. Thank you once again. And we're going to go, I'll see you next week with Veiled Chameleons. Goodbye, all.